The meeting room fell silent when the image appeared on the screen. Every ambassador stared at the white creature floating in the darkness of space. Its scales were like glass, transparent and glowing. Its eyes burned with light that hurt to look at. The dragon's body stretched longer than 3 cargo ships placed end to end. "This is what killed the Karathi trading vessel last month," Ambassador Velthar said. His blue skin seemed paler than usual. 17 crew members, gone in less than 2 minutes. Taeyang watched the recording with his arms crossed. The dragon moved through space like it was swimming through water. When the Karathi ship tried to jump away, the dragon opened its mouth. A white beam shot out and hit the ship. The metal hull turned white, then shattered into 1,000 frozen pieces. "How is that possible?" someone asked. "Nothing can freeze metal in vacuum." "The dragons don't freeze things," Dr. Zenith explained. The veteran scientist had lost 3 colleagues to these creatures 5 years ago. His voice was quiet and sad. "They crystallize matter, change its structure at the molecular level. Everything becomes brittle like glass. Then it breaks." The room filled with nervous whispers. Taeyang felt his wife Nari squeeze his hand under the table. Their daughter Bora was sleeping in the carrier against his chest. She was only 9 months old, too young to understand that her parents had brought her to one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. "HFY Prime has been forbidden for 200 cycles," Velthar continued. "Every species that has tried to approach the moon has died. The Moran telepaths say they can only sense rage from the dragons. Pure, endless rage. We don't know why they attack. We don't know what they want. We only know they cannot be reasoned with." Another ambassador raised her hand. "Then why are we discussing this? Exterminate them and take the resources we need." Velthar's expression didn't change. "We tried. 6 times. The dragons destroyed every weapon we sent before it could fire. They seem to know when we're coming. They're always ready." Taeyang leaned forward. "What resources are on the moon?" "Crystalline deposits that are essential for warp drive manufacturing," Velthar explained. "Without them, faster-than-light travel becomes much more expensive. The galaxy's economy depends on affordable warp technology. HFY Prime has the largest deposits ever discovered." The meeting continued for another hour. Taeyang listened to the different species argue about what to do. Some wanted to keep trying to kill the dragons. Others wanted to find the crystals somewhere else. No one had a good solution. When the meeting ended, Velthar approached Taeyang and Nari. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I have a special assignment for Earth's delegation," he said. "Since humans are new to the Council, we thought you might benefit from an independent mission. A chance to prove your value to the galactic community." Nari's eyes narrowed. "What kind of mission?" "Resource survey in the outer territories. Standard work. You'll receive the full briefing once you're en route." Velthar handed them a data chip. "Your ship leaves tomorrow." That night, Taeyang couldn't sleep. He stood by the window of their quarters watching the stars. Nari joined him, carrying Bora in her arms. The baby was awake now, making small, happy sounds. "Something feels wrong," Nari said. "That ambassador was too friendly." "I know." Taeyang took Bora and held her close. She grabbed his finger and laughed. "But we came here to help humanity join the Council. We can't refuse assignments." "We brought our daughter with us because they said it would be safe," Nari reminded him. "Diplomatic work. Cultural exchange. Not whatever this is." Taeyang kissed Bora's forehead. "We'll read the briefing when we're on the ship. If it's too dangerous, we'll turn back." The next morning, they boarded the human research vessel Harmony. It was small compared to Council ships, but it was fast and well-equipped. The crew welcomed them warmly. Minho, the pilot, helped them get settled. Yuna, the security officer, made sure their quarters were safe for Bora. Jiho, the communications specialist, showed them around the ship. They left the station and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Only then did Taeyang open the briefing files. His blood turned cold as he read. Nari looked over his shoulder and gasped. "HFY Prime," she whispered. "They're sending us to HFY Prime." The files contained everything discussed in the meeting, plus more. Detailed records of every failed expedition. Videos of ships being destroyed. Analysis of dragon behavior. Warning after warning in bright red text. "Do not approach." Lethal force authorized. Mission classified as suicide-level risk. "They set us up," Taeyang said quietly. "They're testing whether humans are expendable." Minho appeared in the doorway. He'd clearly read the files, too. His face was pale. "We can turn back. Tell them the mission parameters were unclear. And then what? Yuna joined them. Earth loses credibility. We prove we're too afraid to help the Council. Future missions get denied. Better than dying, Jiho added. He was young, barely 25. My parents didn't send me to space to get crystallized by angry dragons. They gathered in the common room. Bora sat on the floor, playing with soft blocks. She didn't understand that her parents were trying to decide whether to risk all their lives. Let me show you something, Nari said. She pulled up star charts and dragon attack patterns. Look at this. Every ship that was destroyed approached the moon directly. They came in fast with weapons ready, or they tried to land without permission. So, Yuna asked, so maybe the dragons are defending their territory, protecting something. The Moran telepaths said they only sense rage, Jiho reminded her. The Moran telepaths are afraid of them, Nari countered. Fear changes perception. Maybe they're sensing the dragon's defensive response and interpreting it as rage. Taeyang picked up Bora. She grabbed his nose and giggled. He thought about all the times humans had survived impossible situations. Not through strength or weapons, but through adaptation, through trying something new when the old ways failed. We'll approach carefully, he decided, from a distance. We'll use drones for observation. If the dragons show any aggression, we jump away immediately. No risks, no heroics, just careful study. The crew agreed, though no one looked happy about it. It took them 3 days to reach the outer edge of Kashra Prime's system. The moon hung in space like a giant pearl. Its surface glowed with internal light. Volcanoes erupted constantly, sending plumes of gas into space. And around it, barely visible against the stars, the white dragons flew in slow circles. There's at least 30 of them, Yuna reported. Maybe more hiding in the volcanic clouds. Launch the first drone, Taeyang ordered. Keep it slow. Non-threatening approach. The drone moved toward the moon at minimum speed. They watched its camera feed carefully. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a dragon appeared in front of the drone, moving so fast they didn't see it coming. It opened its mouth. White light flashed. The feed went dead. Drone destroyed, Jiho confirmed. Time from appearance to destruction, 4 seconds. They tried again. And again. Each time a dragon destroyed the drone faster than before. It was like they were learning. Getting quicker. On the third night, Bora started crying. She wouldn't stop. Taeyang walked her around the ship, but nothing helped. She kept reaching toward the viewport, toward the distant moon, as if she wanted something there. She's been fussy since we arrived in the system, Nari said, exhausted. Maybe babies can sense danger. Or maybe she senses something we don't, Taeyang replied. He didn't know how right he was. The alarm woke them at dawn. Yuna's voice came over the speakers, tense and urgent. Everyone to the bridge, now. They ran, carrying Bora. On the main screen, 3 dragons were flying toward the ship. They were massive, beautiful, terrifying. They left the moon, Minho said, disbelief in his voice. The file said they never leave the moon. Ever. The dragons stopped just outside weapon range. They floated there, watching the ship with eyes that burned like stars. One of them tilted its head as if studying something. Taeyang's communicator beeped. A message from Dr. Zenith at the council station. You've provoked something unprecedented. They never leave their moon. Whatever you did, it changed them. Evacuate immediately. You're all going to die. But Bora had stopped crying. She was reaching toward the viewport, toward the dragons, making happy sounds. Her small hand pressed against the glass, and the largest dragon turned its head, focusing directly on where she stood. Taeyang's heart stopped when he saw the dragon staring at his daughter. The creature's burning eyes focused on the viewport where Bora's tiny hand pressed against the glass. Without thinking, he pulled her back, away from the window. The dragon moved backward in space, creating distance. Wait, Nari whispered. Did you see that? See what? Yuna had her hand on the weapon controls, ready to fire. When Taeyang pulled Bora away, the dragon retreated. It responded to her movement. Minho checked his scanners. No aggression readings. Their body temperature is stable. No signs of preparing to attack. He looked up, confused. I've reviewed all the old recordings. Dragons always show heat spikes before they attack. Always. But these 3 are calm. Calm doesn't mean safe, Yuna said. They could be waiting for the right moment. Jiho was recording everything. I need to send this to Earth, to the Council. This behavior doesn't match any previous encounters. No one will believe it, Taeyang said. He was still holding Bora close, but she was squirming in his arms. She wanted to go back to the window. They'll say we faked the recordings or that the dragons are tricking us. So what do we do? Mino asked. We can't just float here forever. For the next 2 hours, they watched the dragons watch them. The creatures didn't move closer. They didn't leave. They simply waited. Bora grew more agitated, crying and reaching toward the window. Nothing Taeyang or Nari did could calm her down. This isn't like her, Nari said, rocking Bora gently. She's usually such a happy baby. Maybe she's sick, Jiho suggested. The stress of space travel, the unfamiliar environment, or maybe she senses something we can't, Taeyang interrupted. He'd been thinking about this for hours. About how babies perceive the world differently than adults, how they haven't learned to fear things yet. Yuna shook her head. You can't seriously be thinking what I think you're thinking. What if the dragons aren't aggressive? Taeyang said slowly. What if every species that approached them came with weapons, with fear, with plans to take their resources? What if they've been defending themselves this whole time and we're the first ones to just stop and wait? That's a big guess to bet our lives on, Minho said. I know. Taeyang looked at his daughter. She was exhausted from crying, her face red and wet with tears. But I'm a xenobiologist. I study life forms across the galaxy, and everything I've learned tells me that intelligent creatures don't attack without reason. Even predators have patterns, logic, survival instincts. These dragons could have destroyed us the moment we entered their system. But they didn't. Nari stood up. I have an idea. Let me take Bora to the observation deck, the one with the large viewing area. If the dragons are responding to her movements, maybe we can test it properly, see if there's real communication happening. Absolutely not, Yuna said firmly. We're not using a baby as bait. I'll be with her, Nari said. And you can keep the engines ready for emergency jump. First sign of danger, we're gone. The argument went on for another hour. Finally, they agreed to try. But with conditions. Nari would take Bora to the observation deck. Yuna would stay at weapons control. Minho would keep his hand on the jump drive. Jiho would record everything. And Taeyang would watch from the bridge, ready to order evacuation if anything went wrong. The observation deck had windows on 3 sides. It was designed for viewing planets and stars during long voyages. Now it would serve as a meeting room between species that had never successfully communicated before. Nari carried Bora into the room. The baby stopped crying immediately. Her eyes went wide as she saw the dragons through the large windows. She reached out with both hands, making excited sounds. On the bridge, Taeyang watched through cameras. His hands gripped the console so hard his knuckles turned white. The largest dragon moved closer to the window. Not fast, not threatening, just slowly drifting forward until it was only a few meters from the glass. This close, they could see details. The dragon's scales weren't solid white. They had colors inside them, like rainbows trapped in ice. Its eyes were complex with multiple layers that shifted and moved. Bora laughed. The sound carried through the ship's speakers. She stretched her hand toward the dragon, fingers opening and closing. The dragon raised one massive claw. It was as long as Nari was tall, sharp enough to cut through metal. But it moved carefully, gently, until the claw touched the window where Bora's hand pressed from inside. Temperature spike, Minho shouted. The dragon is heating up. Wait, Jiho said, staring at his screens. That's not an attack pattern. The heat is concentrated in one spot, right where it's touching the window. On the observation deck, frost appeared on the outside of the glass, but it wasn't spreading. It formed a pattern, lines and curves and shapes that looked almost like writing. Bora clapped her hands and giggled. The dragon pulled back its claw. The frost melted immediately in the vacuum of space. Then the dragon created more patterns, complex geometric shapes that hung in the emptiness like frozen art. It's playing, Nari whispered. The dragon is playing with her. The other 2 dragons moved closer. They began creating their own patterns. The 3 of them worked together, forming elaborate sculptures of crystallized gas and frozen particles. Each time Bora laughed or clapped, they created something new. Taeyang felt tears on his face. He wiped them away quickly. Jiho, are you getting all of this? Every second, Jiho confirmed. His voice was full of wonder. This changes everything we thought we knew. Yuna slowly removed her hand from the weapon controls. I've trained for 15 years to recognize threats, to protect ships from danger, and I'm telling you, there's no threat here. These creatures are happy. They're as excited as the baby is. Try approaching the window yourself, Taeyang suggested. Let's see if they react the same way to an adult. Yuna went to the observation deck. When she stepped close to the window, the dragons immediately stopped their play. They pulled back. Their colors darkened slightly and heat signatures showed small spikes. "They don't trust me," Yuna said. "They're showing stress." "Come back to the bridge," Taeyang ordered. As soon as Yuna left, the dragons relaxed again. They resumed creating patterns for Bora. "What's different about the baby?" Minho wondered. "Why do they respond to her but not us?" Nari had been thinking about this. Intention, perception. Adults approach everything with preconceptions. We see a dragon and think dangerous or valuable or mysterious. We want something from them even if it's just information. But Bora, she sees a big, interesting creature and thinks friend. No fear, no agenda, just pure curiosity and joy. "You're saying they can sense our emotions?" Jiho asked. "Or our intentions? Or something else we don't have words for yet?" Nari watched as Bora yawned. The baby was getting tired from all the excitement. Maybe that's why every other species failed. They came here afraid or greedy, or determined to study these creatures like specimens. The dragons felt that and defended themselves. "But no one told us to be afraid," Taeyang said. "The council sent us here expecting us to fail, but they didn't tell us the dragons were dangerous until we were already in the system. We approached without fear because we didn't know we should be afraid." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The council's attempt to set them up had accidentally created the first peaceful contact with the dragons. Bora fell asleep in Nari's arms. The dragons seemed to notice. They created one final pattern, a spiral that spun slowly in space. Then one by one they turned and flew back toward the moon. But they looked back at the ship several times as if making sure the humans were watching. "They're leaving," Minho said. "Back to their usual patrol patterns." "No," Taeyang corrected him. "They're inviting us. That spiral pattern they made, I've seen something like it before. In ancient human art, it's a symbol for welcome, for come closer." "How could they know human symbols?" Yuna asked. "Maybe it's not just human. Maybe it's universal. The shape of galaxies, of shells, of growth patterns in nature. A spiral says follow this path inward." That night they debated what to do. Earth Command sent a message saying they should return immediately. The council threatened sanctions if they endangered themselves further. Dr. Zenith sent another warning, more urgent than the last. But Taeyang thought about the way the dragon had touched the window so gently. The way it had played with his daughter. The joy in those burning eyes. "We're going down to the surface," he announced. "Tomorrow. If the dragons wanted to kill us, they've had plenty of chances. Instead, they played with the baby and invited us to follow. I think they've been waiting for someone to finally understand them." "And if you're wrong?" Yuna asked. "If we land and they attack?" Taeyang looked at Bora, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. "Then at least we tried something different than everyone else. At least we gave them a chance to be more than monsters." The crew agreed, though they spent the rest of the night preparing emergency protocols and backup plans. Nari designed a special environmental suit for Bora, small and flexible, with monitoring systems and a beacon that could call the ship from anywhere on the moon. As dawn came, artificial dawn, since they were in space, Taeyang stood at the viewport, watching Kashra Prime. The moon was beautiful, dangerous, unknown, and somewhere on its surface, dragons waited for them. He wondered what they would find when they landed. The descent toward Kashra Prime was the longest 20 minutes of Taeyang's life. The landing craft shook as it entered the moon's thin atmosphere. Volcanic ash drifted past the windows like gray snow. Through it all, Bora sat strapped in her special seat, calm and quiet, watching everything with wide eyes. "Heat shields holding," Minho reported from the pilot seat. "But there's a lot of activity down there. 3 active volcanoes within 10 kilometers of our landing site. Can you find somewhere stable?" Nari asked. She sat next to Bora, one hand always touching their daughter. "There's a plateau between 2 lava flows. Solid rock, relatively flat. It's as good as we're going to get on this moon." Yuna checked her weapons for the 10th time. She knew they probably wouldn't help against creatures that could crystallize matter, but holding them made her feel better. Jiho was quiet, recording everything, his face pale with fear and excitement. As they broke through the ash clouds, Kashra Prime's surface became visible. It was like landing on another universe. Crystalline formations rose from the ground like frozen forests. Some were as tall as buildings, glowing with internal light. Lava rivers carved paths between them. their heat making the air shimmer. And everywhere, perched on crystal peaks and circling through the sky, were dragons, hundreds of them. The scans only showed 30, Minho said, his voice tight. There are at least 200 down here. Too late to turn back now, Taeyang said, though his heart was pounding. Take us down to the plateau. The craft landed with a soft thud. For a moment, no one moved. They sat in silence, staring out at the alien landscape. Then Bora made a happy sound and reached toward the window. She wants to go out, Nari said softly. Let's give it a few minutes, Yuna suggested. Make sure nothing approaches with hostile intent. They waited. Through the windows, they watched dragons flying in the distance. None came close. The volcanic landscape was still and quiet except for the rumble of lava and the hiss of escaping gas. Air is breathable with filters, Jiho reported, checking the environmental readings. High sulfur content, but the suits will handle it. Temperature is hot but manageable. No immediate dangers detected. Taeyang made the decision. Nari and I will go out first with Bora. Yuna, you stay at the door with the emergency beacon. If anything goes wrong, get everyone back in the ship and launch. Minho, keep the engines warm. Jiho, record from inside. They put on their suits carefully. Bora's special suit fit her perfectly, with a clear helmet that let her see in all directions. She seemed fascinated by it, touching the glass with her small hands. The door opened with a hiss. Hot air rushed in, smelling of sulfur and burning rock. Taeyang stepped out first, his boots crunching on the crystalline ground. Nari followed, carrying Bora. The plateau was larger than it had looked from above. Smooth black rock stretched for 50 meters in every direction, surrounded by crystal formations that sparkled like diamonds. In the distance, a volcano sent red light into the gray sky. It's beautiful, Nari whispered. Dangerous and beautiful. Bora squirmed in her arms, pointing at something. They turned and saw 3 dragons landing at the far edge of the plateau. The same 3 that had visited their ship. The largest one in front, the other 2 slightly behind. Here we go, Taeyang said. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. The dragons moved forward slowly. They walked on 4 legs, their wings folded against their bodies. Each step was careful, deliberate. They stopped about 10 meters away. This close, without the ship's window between them, the dragons were even more magnificent and terrifying. Their scales reflected light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Their claws left marks in the solid rock. Their breath came out in visible puffs of cold air, strange against the hot surroundings. Bora reached out from Nari's arms, making sounds that might have been words if she were older. The largest dragon lowered its massive head and extended one claw toward her. Let her, Taeyang heard himself say, though every instinct screamed danger. Nari took a deep breath and stepped forward. She held Bora out slightly, letting the baby's hand come within centimeters of the dragon's claw. The moment they touched, Taeyang felt something change in the air. A warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. A sense of connection. The dragon's eyes closed for a moment as if it was experiencing something peaceful. When it opened them again, the burning intensity had softened. It looked at Taeyang and Nari, then back at Bora. Then it turned and began walking toward a large crystal formation. I think we're supposed to follow, Nari said. They walked behind the dragons, crossing the plateau and entering a path between towering crystals. The walls around them glowed faintly, lighting their way. More dragons appeared above, flying in circles overhead but not approaching. Where are they taking us? Yuna's voice came through the communication system. She was following at a safe distance with Minho and Jiho. I don't know, Taeyang replied, but they're not rushing. They keep looking back to make sure we're following. The path opened into a massive cavern. Taeyang stopped, stunned by what he saw. The space was larger than any building he'd ever been in. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, and covering every surface were crystals of different colors, blue, green, purple, gold. They pulsed with light in a slow rhythm, like breathing. In the center of the cavern, arranged in careful patterns, were hundreds of eggs. Each one was the size of a small car, translucent like the dragon scales, with something dark visible inside. These are their young, Nari breathed. This is a nesting ground. The lead dragon walked to the nearest egg cluster and touched it gently with one claw. Then it looked back at Bora and made a sound. Not aggressive, not scary. It sounded sad. Recording everything, Jiho said from behind them. He'd entered the cavern with the others, his camera capturing every detail. But I don't understand, If these are dragon eggs, why do they look old? He was right. The eggs weren't fresh. They had a dull quality, like windows that hadn't been cleaned in years. The shapes inside weren't moving. Taeyang approached one carefully. Through the translucent shell, he could see a small dragon curled up inside. But it wasn't growing. It was frozen, trapped, waiting. How long have these eggs been here? He wondered aloud. The dragon touched the wall and the crystals there began showing images. Taeyang realized he was seeing history. Ancient history. Dragons flying through different skies, visiting different worlds. Dragons interacting with other species, sharing knowledge. Dragons bringing their eggs to this moon and something going wrong. The images showed eggs that wouldn't hatch. Dragons waiting, watching, growing desperate as decades passed, then centuries. They can't hatch on their own, Nari said, understanding flooding through her. Something is missing, something they need that they don't have. Another image appeared in the crystals. It showed a small creature approaching an egg and touching it. The egg began to glow. Inside, the young dragon moved for the first time in ages. They need help hatching, Taeyang said, but not from adults. From children. From young minds that haven't learned to be afraid yet. The lead dragon rumbled deep in its chest. It moved aside, creating a clear path between Bora and the nearest egg cluster. They've been waiting for someone to understand, Nari whispered. For centuries. Every species that came here approached with weapons or fear or greed. The dragons attacked to protect their unhatched children. They couldn't let anyone near the eggs who might harm them. But they sensed something different in Bora, Taeyang added. Pure curiosity. Wonder without fear. The same quality that lets young ones help eggs hatch. Yuna spoke from the entrance. Are we really going to let a baby touch alien eggs that might be dangerous? Look at them, Nari said, gesturing to the dragons around them. More had entered the cavern, filling it with their presence. But they weren't threatening. They were hopeful, desperate. Their parents watching their children die. They've been trying to save them for 300 years. Bora was squirming again, reaching for the eggs like she had reached for the dragons in space. Nari looked at Taeyang. He saw his own fear reflected in her eyes and his own hope too. Together, he said. They walked to the egg cluster. The dragons moved closer but didn't interfere. Nari held Bora carefully, letting her small hand touch the smooth surface of the nearest egg. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then the egg began to glow, faint at first like a candle behind thick glass, then brighter. The glow spread from where Bora touched it, filling the entire shell with light. Inside, the young dragon moved. A leg twitched. A wing unfolded slightly. Bora laughed, delighted. She touched another egg. It began glowing too. The adult dragons made sounds unlike anything Taeyang had heard before. Not threatening roars or crystallizing breath. These were sounds of joy, relief, hope finally fulfilled after centuries of despair. The other eggs are responding, Jiho said, his voice full of wonder. Look, throughout the cavern, eggs were beginning to glow. Not just the ones Bora touched, but all of them. Whatever frequency or energy or pure intention she was giving off, it was spreading. Then the first egg cracked. A piece of shell fell away and a small white claw pushed through. The dragons surrounded it, helping carefully as the baby emerged. It was tiny compared to the adults, no bigger than a large dog. Its scales were soft and its eyes were bright. The cavern filled with tension. Taeyang could feel it in the air, see it in the way the adult dragons positioned themselves between the eggs and the entrance. Above ground, council warships were descending. Below ground, new life was hatching after 300 years of waiting. Taeyang, think about what you're doing. Velthar's voice came through the communicator. Cold, calculated. You have your daughter with you. Don't make her pay for your poor judgment. Nari moved closer to Taeyang, holding Bora tight. We're transmitting everything we recorded to Earth, she said into the communicator. Every moment of peaceful contact, every egg hatching. If you attack now, the whole galaxy will see you destroying intelligent life that never threatened you. Transmitting won't help, Velthar replied. By the time anyone sees your recordings, this will be over. The Council has authorized this action. The dragons are too dangerous to exist near trade routes. They're only dangerous because everyone approaches them with weapons, Taeyang shouted. He was losing his temper, which was unusual for him, but watching baby dragons emerge into a world that wanted them dead made his blood boil. We proved peaceful contact is possible. You just don't want to admit you were wrong for 300 years. There was a pause. Then Velthar spoke again, and his tone had changed. Less cold, more honest. You don't understand what you've discovered, human, but I do. And that's why you cannot be allowed to leave this moon alive. The communication cut off. What did he mean by that? Yuna asked. She had her weapon ready, though she knew it would be useless against warships. Taeyang was about to answer when the largest dragon made a deep sound. All the other adult dragons responded, creating a harmony that made the crystal walls vibrate. Then something extraordinary happened. The crystals throughout the cavern began projecting images again, but clearer than before, sharper, more detailed. They're trying to show us something, Jiho said, his camera capturing everything. Some kind of history lesson. The images showed dragons flying between stars without ships. They visited dozens of worlds, interacting with primitive species, teaching them, guiding them. The dragons touched stones, and the stones became crystals that stored information. They touched plants, and the plants grew faster. They touched sick creatures, and the creatures healed. They're knowledge keepers, Nari breathed. They can store and transfer information through crystalline structures. That's why the warp drive crystals are on this moon. The dragons created them. More images flowed, the dragons helping species develop technology, recording their histories, preserving their cultures. Every young dragon that hatched carried memories from the adults, creating a living library that spanned the galaxy. Then the images darkened. Ships arrived at Kashra Prime, not human ships, council ships from centuries ago. But these weren't scientific vessels. They were military. The dragons greeted them peacefully as they had greeted every species. But the council forces attacked. They tried to capture dragons, to study them, to take the crystals without permission. The dragons defended themselves. Many council soldiers died. But so did many dragons. The battle raged for months until the council retreated, declaring the moon forbidden and the dragons too dangerous to approach. They lied, Yuna said, stunned. The council attacked first. The dragons were just protecting themselves. The images showed more. The council making laws to keep everyone away from Kashra Prime, spreading stories about how dangerous the dragons were, all while secretly mining crystals from the moon's edges, taking what they needed while making sure no one else could learn the truth. The final image showed dragon eggs refusing to hatch. The adults tried everything, but without the presence of young, fearless minds from other species, the way hatching had always worked before, the eggs remained dormant. The dragons had been isolated for so long that their natural life cycle was breaking down. Velthar knows all this, Taeyang said, understanding flooding through him. If we tell the galaxy that the council lied, that they attacked first and then covered it up for centuries, the entire government would collapse. They can't let that information spread. So they'll destroy the evidence, Nari finished. Us, the dragons, everything. The baby dragons were still hatching. 5 had emerged now, with more eggs cracking every minute. They gathered around Bora, chirping and playing. She giggled and touched their soft scales. It was the most beautiful scene Taeyang had ever witnessed, and warships were coming to end it. We have to stop them, he said. But how? We're scientists, not soldiers. We have one small ship and no weapons that could damage a council warship. Minho's voice crackled through the communicator. I'm at the ship. 3 warships have landed about 5 kilometers away. Ground forces are deploying. They'll reach the cavern in approximately 10 minutes. And there are more ships in orbit, preparing to bomb this entire area. 10 minutes. Taeyang looked around desperately. At the dragons who had waited 300 years. At the babies just learning to see. At his daughter who had bridged the gap between species with nothing but innocence and joy. An idea formed. Crazy, dangerous, but possibly their only chance. The baby dragons, he said to Nari. You said they carry memories from the adults, right? Information stored in their crystalline structure? That's what the images showed, Nari confirmed. Why? What if they can transmit those memories? Share them directly? Taeyang turned to the largest dragon. Can you do that? Can your young ones share what you've shown us? Broadcast it somehow. The dragon seemed to understand. It made a sound to the newly hatched babies. They chirped back, their small voices surprisingly strong. Then they began to glow, not with the soft light of hatching, but with bright, pulsing energy. They're generating a signal, Jiho said, checking his instruments. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but it's carrying data, massive amounts of data. And it's getting stronger. Will it reach the council ships? Yuna asked. It's reaching everything, Jiho replied, his eyes wide. This signal is broadcasting across the entire system, maybe beyond. Every ship, every station, every communication device is receiving it. The baby dragons sang together, their voices creating a harmony that resonated through the cavern. The crystals amplified the sound, and with it, the signal. The memories the adult dragons had shown them were being transmitted to everyone who could receive. Ground forces have stopped advancing, Minho reported. They're standing still. I think they're seeing the transmission. In orbit, the council warships held their position. Taeyang imagined the crews watching their screens, seeing the true history of the dragons for the first time. Seeing how their own government had attacked first and lied about it for centuries. This is Ambassador Velthar, the communicator crackled. His voice was different now, strained. Cease your transmission immediately. You are spreading classified information. This is an act of war against the council. No, Taeyang replied. This is an act of truth. You can't hide what really happened anymore. The whole galaxy is watching. More eggs hatched. The baby dragons joined the song, making the signal stronger. The adult dragons surrounded them protectively, but they weren't preparing to fight. They were hoping, waiting to see if truth would be enough. Multiple ships entering the system, Minho announced. I'm reading transponders from a dozen different species. They're responding to the broadcast. Ships were arriving, not just council vessels, but independent craft from across the galaxy. News organizations, scientific teams, diplomatic missions. Everyone wanted to see if the transmission was real, if the dragons had truly been victims rather than villains. Among the arriving ships was one Taeyang recognized, Dr. Zenith's research vessel. Taeyang, this is Zenith. The Vectran scientist's voice came through clearly. I'm seeing the transmission. We all are. By the stars, I lost my colleagues because the council lied to us. They told us the dragons attacked first. We believed them. More voices joined. Ship captains, scientists, even other council ambassadors who were just learning the truth. The cavern's communicator filled with dozens of conversations, all discussing the broadcast, all questioning the official story they'd been told. Ground forces are withdrawing, Yuna reported. They're returning to their ships. The baby dragons stopped singing. The transmission ended. They looked tired but happy, cuddling against the adult dragons. Bora yawned, exhausted from the excitement. She was still just a baby, unaware that she had helped change galactic history. The council will try to cover this up, Nari said quietly. They'll say it's fake or taken out of context. Maybe, Taeyang agreed. But they can't erase it from everyone's mind. Too many people saw it. Too many species are questioning now. A new voice came through the communicator, older, weary. This is High Counselor Prath. I am ordering all council forces to stand down immediately. There will be no military action against Kashra Prime. The humans have opened our eyes to a grave injustice. Belthar's voice cut in, angry and desperate. High Counselor, these transmissions could destabilize the entire council. We must contain this situation. No, Velthar, we must face it. The truth has a way of coming to light eventually. Better to acknowledge our mistakes than compound them with more violence. Prath paused. Human delegation, you have done something remarkable today and dangerous. 3 weeks had passed since the dragon's transmission changed the galaxy. Taeyang stood in the same cavern where everything had begun, but it looked completely different now. Where there had been dormant eggs, there were now young dragons everywhere. Playing, learning, growing. and learning alongside them were human children. Dozens of families had volunteered to come to HFY Prime, parents who wanted their children to be part of something historic, scientists who wanted to study the bond between species, teachers who saw an opportunity to learn from creatures that stored thousands of years of knowledge. The cavern had been transformed into a living space. Humans had built comfortable habitats that could handle the heat and sulfur. The dragons had shaped crystal formations into structures that provided shade and shelter. It was cooperation in its purest form. Bora crawled across the smooth floor, chasing a young dragon she'd befriended. The dragon's name, translated through the crystal communication system the humans and dragons had developed, was something like Morning Light. It matched her playfulness perfectly. Morning Light pretended to run away, then let Bora catch up, making happy chirping sounds. "She's getting faster," Nari said, sitting next to Taiyang. "Both of them are." "Did you ever imagine this when we left Earth?" Taiyang asked. "I imagined diplomatic meetings and cultural exchanges. Maybe some nice alien food." Nari laughed. "Not befriending crystalline dragons and exposing 300 years of government conspiracy." The conspiracy. That had been the hardest part of the past 3 weeks. The council had fractured. Some members had known about the attack on the dragons and the cover-up. Others had been kept in the dark, fed the same lies as everyone else. The anger and betrayal had been intense. Velthar and several other ambassadors had been removed from their positions. High Counselor Praith had resigned, accepting responsibility for not questioning the official story. New elections were being held, new representatives chosen. The entire structure of galactic government was being rebuilt with transparency as its foundation. And at the center of it all were the dragons. Dr. Zenith entered the cavern, moving carefully around the playing children and dragons. He'd been coming every day since the revelation, spending hours with the adult dragons, learning their true history. The colleagues he'd lost hadn't died because of dragon aggression. They died because the council had sent them to harvest crystals illegally, and the dragons had defended their home. "The adult dragons have something to show you," Zenith said to Taeyang. "Something important." They walked deeper into the cavern system, past chambers where baby dragons slept in warm nests, past pools of clean water that the dragons had somehow created from the volcanic rock. They reached a chamber Taeyang had never seen before. Its walls were covered in crystals of every color, pulsing with gentle light. The largest dragon was waiting, the one that had first responded to Bora. It made a low sound, and the crystals began showing images. Taeyang watched, amazed, as the story unfolded. The dragons were ancient, far more ancient than any species in the council. They had been traveling between stars when most current civilizations were still primitive. They had helped dozens of species develop technology, learn to communicate, reach the stars themselves. But they had never sought to rule, never wanted worship or control. They were teachers, guides, living libraries that preserved knowledge and shared it freely. Every young dragon that hatched carried not just dragon memories, but memories of every species they'd interacted with, every culture they'd helped, every discovery they'd witnessed. "They're offering to share all of this," Zenith said quietly. "With humanity, with everyone. The complete history of galactic civilization, unfiltered by politics or pride." "Why now?" Taeyang asked. "They could have done this centuries ago." The dragon projected another image. It showed the attack from the council forces 300 years earlier. The betrayal, the violence, the decision to isolate themselves rather than risk more death. But isolation had brought its own death, the slow end of their species as eggs refused to hatch without the presence of other young minds. They were waiting for a species that approached them with pure intent, Nari said, understanding. One that could be trusted with truth. "And we were stupid enough to send our baby into a situation we didn't understand," Taeyang added with a bitter laugh. "The council set us up to fail, and it worked so perfectly that it succeeded." The dragon made a sound that almost seemed like laughter. It nuzzled Taeyang gently, then projected one more image. A future, humans and dragons together, traveling between stars, sharing knowledge, helping other species, not conquerors or victims, partners. Over the following weeks, that vision began to become reality. The dragons taught humans how to grow certain crystals that could store vast amounts of information. Humans taught dragons about their own discoveries, their art, their music. Young dragons learned human languages. Human children learned to interpret dragon harmonics. Jiho had started a school in the cavern. Human and dragon young ones learned together. Math, science, history from both perspectives. The children loved it. They didn't see the dragons as aliens or monsters, just as friends who happened to have scales and wings. Minho established regular transport routes between Earth and Kashra Prime. Every week new families arrived. Some stayed permanently. Others visited for a few months before returning home. The moon that had been forbidden for centuries became one of the most welcoming places in the galaxy. Yuna trained security teams from multiple species on how to protect both humans and dragons. Not from each other, but from the remaining council loyalists who wanted to return to the old ways. There had been 3 attempted attacks in the first month. All had failed, stopped by dragons and humans working together. News of the dragon awakening spread across the galaxy. Other species began questioning what else the council had hidden from them. Old agreements were reviewed. Historical records were examined. Slowly, painfully, the truth about many things began to emerge. Some species were angry at humanity for exposing the lies. They blamed humans for destabilizing the comfortable order. But others were grateful. They sent messages of thanks, requests to meet the dragons, applications to establish exchange programs. Earth's status in the galaxy transformed overnight. They were no longer the newest, least advanced species. They were the bridge builders, the truth seekers, the ones who had done what no one else could. 6 months after first contact, Taeyang stood on a platform in the main council chamber. It had taken that long to organize a proper session where all species could attend. The chamber was packed. Representatives from 73 species, observers from dozens more. And in a specially built area to one side, 5 adult dragons watched silently. The council has asked me to speak about human-dragon relations, Taeyang began. His voice was steady, though he felt nervous. To explain how we achieved peaceful contact where everyone else failed. The truth is simple. We didn't know we were supposed to fail. He told the story. The mission they'd thought was routine. The dragon encounter that terrified them. Bora reaching out with innocent curiosity. The slow realization that fear had been the problem all along. Every species approached the dragons with preconceptions, he said. With weapons or greed or scientific detachment. The dragons sensed those intentions and defended themselves. But my daughter had no preconceptions. She saw creatures and thought friend, not threat. That simple perspective changed everything. He paused, looking at the assembled representatives. Some looked ashamed, others angry. Many seemed thoughtful. Humanity isn't special, Taeyang continued. We're not braver or smarter than anyone here. We were just lucky enough to be ignorant. The council sent us to Kashra Prime expecting us to die, and that lack of preparation saved us. Because we didn't know to be afraid, we weren't afraid. And that made all the difference. He stepped back. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Praith, the former High Counselor who had stepped down but still held influence, stood. The dragons have requested permission to address the council directly, he said. For the first time in 300 years they wish to speak. I move that we grant this request. The vote was unanimous. The largest dragon moved to the center of the chamber. It didn't speak with sound. Instead, it projected images and emotions through the crystal communication system that now connected all the chamber's technology. Every representative received the message directly in their mind. The dragon showed them truth, not accusations or demands, just memories. The galaxy, as it had been thousands of years ago, when the dragons helped primitive species reach for the stars. The joy of sharing knowledge, the sadness of betrayal, the loneliness of isolation. The hope renewed when one small human baby reached out without fear, and then it showed them the future it hoped for. Not a galaxy ruled by dragons, not even a galaxy where dragons were central. Just a galaxy where knowledge flowed freely, where species helped each other grow, where mistakes were acknowledged and learned from rather than hidden. When the projection ended, many representatives were crying. Taiyang saw even hardened military officers wiping their eyes. "We have made terrible mistakes," one ambassador said, "not just in how we treated the dragons, but in how we built our entire system on secrets and control.